Good morning, Susan. Just let me know, as always, if the sound is okay here. I always like to just do a double check on the sound. Good morning, Jen. Yeah, if someone could just let me know if the sound is good, we will. Okay, good. You can hear me. That's always one of my paranoias. So, welcome as you guys come in. I will definitely give it a few minutes to get started as people are kind of coming in. If you do see me looking off to the side here, I have the chat window open up on the side just because we're going to be sharing my screen, so I didn't want to have the chat open too, or I actually don't think I could have, but let me say good morning. Good morning, Nicole. Hey, Laura. Hey, Hitch Chicky. Hey, Wendy. Hi, everyone. Hi, Lisa. Yeah, I'm sorry about that white noise. I guess you can hear it. My computer, the fan was just running. I don't know if it was like because the stream was going live that the fan started running, but hopefully that stops. But it's just my computer fan, so I'm sorry, I can't change it. Yeah, so excited to kind of kick off the Saturday events of the Splash Pad Party. So I hope you guys are ready for the fun lineup that Jen has for all of us, both today and tomorrow, as well as like the entire Splash Pad Party. So yeah, if you guys want, I always love to know where people are kind of tuning in from. So if you want to let us know where you're kind of coming from, and yeah, let us know, and then we'll get started in a few minutes. I'll kind of introduce the kind of what we're going to be doing today. So I'm going to do like a semi live dye with me. So I pre-recorded the oh, so I should say hi, I'm Lauren from A Girl and Her Wool. If you guys don't know, I should introduce myself. I'm so excited to jump on in that I totally forgot about the whole introduction part. But I do have a hand-dyed yarn shop called A Girl and Her Wool, where I dye up hand-dyed yarn at home, just me. And of course, kind of my little bit is that I do any size skein. So a lot of you know this already, but if you don't know, I do sell yarn in all sizes, so from mini minis to extra large skeins. So that's kind of something fun that I like to do. All right, so we have Missouri, Dallas, Seattle, Delaware, India, hello, Colorado, rainy southeastern PA. Yeah, definitely a lot of rain, but you know what? I'm not upset about it because it was so hot and dry all week that I'm kind of okay with it. Seattle. Oh, and Jen's knitting on her Not in Kansas Anymore socks. So that is the colorway from the pigskin party. So we did kind of a similar live stream back in, what was it, September, where we dyed up that colorway. So hello, Adore Knit. Hello, Gannett. Hey, Christy. Excited to have you guys all here, New Hampshire. So we're kind of all over the US plus India. So that's exciting. New Jersey, of course, Wendy, and crocheting the Fall Ravens vest. Very cool. Yes, we definitely needed the rain for sure. Rainy and cold in Connecticut. I bet. It's so, I know, I feel like we got like an early summer and now it's like a cold spring again. All right, but anyway, so what I kind of wanted to do today is kind of similar to what we did for the pigskin party. So I wanted to do kind of a live dye with me, but you can tell I'm not in a dye studio, right? I'm kind of just hanging out here. So for kind of like safety reasons for myself of like talking while dyeing, as well as just wanting to make sure I had enough time to get through the skein. I think that last time I was a little bit nervous about that. I pre-recorded the dyeing, and so we're gonna kind of just talk about it. And what I thought was fun about this is that I can kind of pause things, So if you guys follow me here on YouTube, and if you don't, you can certainly feel free to subscribe right now if you want to. I do dye with me's every other Tuesday on my channel. And I just thought it would be fun, like, so if you normally have questions while you're watching my dye with me's, this is a great way that we can like kind of go back and forth about some of those questions. And then if we want to like pause, rewind, whatever we want to do, we can do. So I thought that would be kind of easier for me to answer the questions without also stressing about getting yarn dyed. So I hope that'll work out. Amber's working on socks from the March dye with me. That was a fun month. I loved the March colorway. So if you guys don't know, I do a mystery yarn of the month club. And all you know about is the inspiration photo. So you can definitely check that out at agirlandherwool.com. I'll talk a little bit more about kind of things in the shop after, but we can definitely head over to the dyeing. So what are we going to be dyeing? We are going to be dyeing up the Splash Pad Party exclusive colorway on the Boardwalk. And I have some skeins of it here to show you guys if you haven't seen it yet. So it's kind of like a whitish and then light blue, dark blue base with speckles of, you guys will see throughout the video, but we get some fun speckling in there of pinks and kind of some neutrals and browns and that kind of thing. But still some white, and I thought this was a fun one to do. We've got the blues for the splash pad, bright summer colors in there as well. So, and it might, I don't know, tell me, does this look like a complicated skein to dye? This was actually a pretty easy colorway to dye, so I thought it would be fun to have it there. And this is it on DK. This DK skein has a little bit more blue on it, but that is hand-dyed yarn for you. So we can watch that now. And again, if you have any questions, you can ask me at any time. I can pause, again, rewind, go back, whatever we want to do. And this is my first time doing kind of this sharing a video thing, so we practiced, but bear with me as we figure this out. Hopefully you guys will be able to see this. So I'm gonna switch it over. Obviously there's a lag, so I'm gonna, if you see me like kind of pause for a few seconds, if someone could just let me know if you see some yarn in a dye pan, that would be great. So yes, if someone could let me know if you guys can see the dyeing, that would be good. And I can no longer like see myself or anything. So this is definitely where I'm going to be checking the chat over off to the side. And I'm going to have a water break while I kind of wait for a comment or two to come in. Oh, great. The comments were not coming in on my phone. Okay, so you guys can see it. Okay, we're gonna kind of try and figure that. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I can refresh my comments here. Otherwise, I will not be able to see you guys talking. Okay, now I can see it. That technology problem number one. All right, so we can see the yarn. I want to say too, you might see some kind of like lagging. Thank you. My mother just texted me to let me know that she can also see it. It's not playing yet. Sorry guys. Technical issue number one. It might get a little laggy, but I think this is all going to work okay. But the yarn should be playing now. So one thing off the bat, and I'm just going to pause it to make sure I have time to say this. Of course, I forgot to press play. I forgot to start recording the camera before I started applying the dye. So let me just introduce it here. You guys will see me apply more of the blue, so it'll be fine. But let me just kind of talk about what I have here. So you can see I have skeins kind of piled up. If you haven't watched my dye with me's, I do have it. I do tend to pile up my yarn into kind of little mounds. So you'll see it zoomed out in a little bit. I know it's very close. I wanted to show it very close up and focus on kind of some of these skeins, but all I did at this point was take a dark blue and just kind of use my strainer and just kind of apply some of the dye and then blend it into the water, so you kind of see some of the dark bits, but then it's also kind of blending out. And again, you'll see more of this in a little bit. So again, just kind of applying some more of the dark blue there so you can see it. And of course, I'm just kind of, so the dye is powder, so that's how you kind of get some of the speckles on there, but then you also see it blending into the water as well. And so another thing I wanted to talk about on here too is that you see there's still a lot of the white skein, a lot of white yarn still. So I have the water level. You can kind of see the water level is pretty close to the top of the yarn here, but there's a lot of yarn above the water. And I talk about this a lot in my vlogs, but what ends up happening is because some of the yarn is above the water, the dye can't actually move to it. So as the dye kind of moves throughout the water, it just can't get to those sections of it. And so you do continue to see some of the white here, just the blue doesn't bleed onto it. So that's how I kept a lot of the skein white. Again, I'm not getting comments, so I hope this is working. If not, maybe my husband will come through the door and tell me it's not working, but I hope you guys are seeing this. Yeah, I can't see the comments. Okay, sorry guys, technical issues here. Hopefully you guys are all seeing this. Maybe I'll flip back just one more time to see. Okay. Okay, it's working. Okay, good. So anyway, that's kind of the first layer here. Again, I can kind of move this along, but I do think I start moving it along as well. One thing about dyeing yarn is that it pretty much is a lot of waiting. So you apply dye and wait for it to set. So you guys, I didn't edit a lot of this video out. Okay. I'm getting like a backup commenter here. I just think everyone is being quiet. So I'm doing this wrong too. Okay. Sorry guys. All right, so moving kind of this along. All right. So I applied the blue dye, let it set. So the reason why I wanted to sit and let it wait for so long is that I didn't want the blue to bleed out into the water if I started moving it around. But at this point it's pretty set, so even moving the skeins around like I just did, the blue doesn't bleed into the water. And you kind of see it here a little bit, probably not so much, but the water stayed pretty clear, which is how we kept a lot of the white skeins. So I'm coming in again, this is where I said you'll see more of like the dark blue coming in. So this is how I applied the dark blue in the beginning too. So I just kind of speckled some of the dark blue onto there, and then I push it into the water. You know, the skein is wet, so I can kind of push it into the yarn, push it into the water, and that's how it kind of somewhat bleeds a little bit, but stays pretty still. How do I know what color to start with? It's a splash pad party, so I started with blue. It's as simple as that. I mean, there are different ways that I find inspiration to dye up colorways. I use photos sometimes, but this was the splash pad party, so I wanted to start with a pretty blue. How long do I wait before flipping? So what I'll do, and I kind of fast forwarded a little bit, so you might not have seen it, but a lot of times what I'll do is I'll kind of push into the dye and see if it starts to spread. So if I can push some of these spots that have the blue on it into the water, I can see if it starts to spread into the water or not. That's usually what I do. In terms of like estimates, something like this where there's not that much dye in it, it could be as simple as like 5 minutes. Usually I'm dyeing up other colors. I think at this time I was dyeing up other stuff, so I'll kind of go to the other pans, apply some dyes to those, and then kind of come back and check on it. But yeah, sometimes it's as easy as a few minutes. Other colors like reds take a long time to set, so that I'll give even longer. And like if I put a lid on it, that will help too. Just kind of let it get like steamy in there as well with some of the top parts of the skein. I don't think I had a full plan for it, to be quite honest. I can't remember. I think I dyed this like whenever I launched the color, so maybe like a month ago. I don't think I had a full plan, no. I knew I wanted some blue, and I knew I wanted to keep some of it white and then speckle in the white sections, but I don't know if I had planned what colors I would be speckling. Does it matter if you dye light to dark or dark to light? So it depends on this, like what you're going with. So it's hard to dye light colors over dark colors, so that's something to keep in mind. Like, so if I'm doing a color that maybe, you know, I want to do a yellow, but then I want to apply like a dark, I don't know, we'll go the opposite end of the stream of this, the other end of it, and say black. If I put black dye over yellow, it'll completely cover it up. Yellow won't show on black. So it's just kind of like things like that to think about. So if I do an entirely black skein, I won't get any yellow that I can put on top of it. If I do a base layer of yellow, I can still make sections of it black. But this was a pretty dark blue. I started with it because that's what I wanted my base color to be. So it does matter depending on what the look of the skein is, but I knew I would also have the white sections to still play with. So again, this is kind of just setting, and I can, again, move this along. You can see it's a lot of waiting. So I'm coming back here to, again, flip the skeins around so I can start speckling. I think that's, yeah. So I'm going to, again, start moving the skeins around to just bring up some of the white parts of the yarn. White parts of the skein. And then we can start speckling. And again, you can see, so I think this DK skein is actually the one that I'm dyeing up. So if you look at it in there, and I said there's a lot more blue on this than the sock skeins, right? Like, actually, I don't know if you guys, I think you guys can still see me. But you can see a little bit more of the blue kind of bled into the DK skein there. You can see it's a little bit more of a lighter blue. Whereas the sock skein next to it, so the one on the right, has a lot more of the white skein still left. So again, they were dyed in the same pan. It just was, you know, some of the blue dye just kind of bled a little bit more. And again, that's hand dyed yarn. It's not going to be 100% consistent. Does dyeing a speckled yarn take longer than a variegated yarn? So dyeing a speckled yarn takes longer in the sense that I like to be careful. So I don't like the dye to bleed. So when you speckle, and you guys will see this kind of like any second now, let's see if I can move. Yeah, okay. So let's do some speckling and I'll come back to the speckled yarn question. So the color that I kind of decided to come with, and you guys saw it when when I showed you at the beginning, but the first color I kind of come in is kind of a rich pink. And you can see, you know, you guys can see the water is bubbling. I probably will turn the pan down a little bit, but it's good to have the extra heat for speckling and to get the steam. Because again, so you see speckling, I'm going a little bit more slowly, a little bit more carefully, and I'm trying to just get the dye in certain areas. Again, I wanted like bits of it. So you can see where you can definitely see it here, right? So you see the dye powder kind of staying still on top of the skeins, as well as you have the sections where the pink kind of got into that bubbly water and it kind of got diluted by the water. And so those kind of pieces that stayed on top, I like to be really careful with those. I don't want to move the skeins too much and have them bleed out. So what I'll often do is then put a lid on and let the steam kind of continue to set on there. So in terms of like what takes longer, speckled yarn or variegated yarn, I just often like to let the speckles sit for just like a little bit longer just to be sure. And I kind of came in with this second color that you see. It looks almost like a green yellow. You'll see the clip does kind of jump in time a little bit because I think I did cut it to put the pan lid on. It ends up, when it heats up, it becomes more of like a cream neutral. It doesn't stay kind of like this green color, which is also interesting with how the different colors do it. So kind of coming back to speckled versus variegated, I do like to be more careful with the dyes with the speckles, so that makes it take longer because I want to just make sure it's really set. But then again, for variegated yarns, you really want to make sure it's saturated. So it can go either way. If you do like a purely speckled skein and you just speckle a whole bunch of colors, you can then put your lid on and forget about it. If you're doing a variegated yarn, you kind of want to make sure that like the yarn gets saturated so you have enough, so you don't want to leave white spots if you don't want white spots and that kind of thing. So the answer to all questions, it depends. But I hope that kind of gives a little bit more background there. So here's the time jump. So let me kind of just point that out a little bit. I probably put the lid on at this point to just let the steam get on top of the skein to help it set. But if you look at kind of that second color that I speckled that looks kind of green, when it jumps to the next clip, you'll see it change to kind of a more neutral, not like a yellow, like a real true like neutral cream color. So if you like keep your eyes on one bit of it. And I don't know how far I rewound it. But we'll see. Yeah, maybe saw it, maybe not, hopefully. But yeah, so that color, it's really cool how some dyes really change with heat. Some really darken and some really brighten. And that's one of the ones that really brightens. So again, I have the pan probably a little bit hotter than I normally would and probably would bring it down again, but because I want those speckles to kind of like really stay, I have it a little bit higher. So I am going to move it around. I am going to add, I think, one more color and also move it around and speckle it again, but I'll let it play while I just read through this a little bit. Yeah, so this is, I think, this is a new color that I'm speckling. So it's kind of a color that speckles really well, and it just kind of like brightens it up. So I had that neutral color that I said lightens a lot. So this kind of just like added a little bit more. You can also see I'm speckling on top of each other. So like the pink, the neutral, and kind of this newer like brownish color, it all is sitting in one spot. I'm kind of speckling everything on top of each other. And what I like doing about that is it kind of like makes the different color dimensions, and it just kind of makes it really big pops of color in one section. So I think it was Jen who asked at the beginning if I had a plan going into it for everything. I didn't have like which colors I was going to do, but I kind of knew this style. Like I wanted the dark blue with some white for like the pool kind of theme, and then I knew I wanted to do sections of heavily speckled areas, but I didn't have which colors I wanted to do. So again, I'm gonna let, at this point in when I'm dyeing, I'm gonna let this kind of like sit and set, and then we'll move it around and speckle kind of all of them in a different area again. So do I dye my mini skeins as full skeins and then divide them? So I've done that before. So I typically, if we're going to use the word typically, I typically dye my minis as minis. But sometimes I will put like 5 minis in a pan together. If I'm doing, 5 mini skein sets that are all the same colors, I'll just put all of them in one pan and do them at the same time. I generally prefer that versus doing a 100-gram skein and dividing it out for a few reasons. One of them is because if I do it as an 100-gram skein and then divide it into minis, that's very time consuming because I have one skein winder and one kind of other winder that I can use to kind of break off the minis, and I have to do it one at a time. Versus how my setup is, I have an electronic skein winder that has the ability to do up to 3 skeins at a time, so I can wind 3 at a time if I just go off of my cones making the minis before dyeing. So that's kind of one reason that I do them as separate minis for time. The other reason is because if I were to do a tonal color, I'd be fine with doing a 100-gram skein and winding them off because it doesn't really change the look of the mini. But when I have like a color like this, if I were to dye it as an 100-gram skein and then wind this off into minis, you would lose like the fact that there's dark blue in a spot and the fact that you have the speckles in one spot, and it would all blend it together. And so in the end, it doesn't change how it's knit up, how the skein arrives to somebody, but I prefer to have it kind of arrive with how I photograph it, basically. Hope that answers that question. So convenience for me, and then also from a looks perspective, I prefer to dye minis separate, but like multiple ones in a pan. Okay, so let's fast forward here. So again, kind of as I said, I'm just going to move the skeins around. You can see, again, this is something I talk about a lot, but it looks like I probably speckled a lot when you have the 3 skeins up like that. But there's a lot of yarn underneath. Like, there's a lot underneath. You can see most of the skein has not been speckled. And so just moving it around, and you can see like all of the unspeckled yarn as well as a lot of white. There's still a lot of white to the skein even though we've applied the blue and then all of the speckles. So kind of coming in now a little bit. You can see that one definitely got a lot that fell off of the strainer on that first bit, but generally kind of taking it slow and just doing a little bit at a time. I'm just going to take a quick water break while we continue to speckle. See, this is great. I'm dyeing yarn and relaxing at the same time. So again, kind of coming in with that neutral. I talked about dyeing all in one spot, but you can also see I'm also doing it all at the same time. So I had those 2 colors that I speckled kind of at the same time. And I find that that just kind of helps them blend in a little bit versus sometimes when I will do it, and we did this with the rainbow. Well, maybe we didn't do it so much with the rainbow, but again, for time reasons. But you can really, if you let one set and then do the second color, they won't blend together since the first one is already set. Whereas doing it at the same time, it kind of just helped blend the 2 colors in together a little bit, which again was what I was going for. Is there a max skeins I do at once? Yeah, so for minis, I probably, it really depends on how much I can fit in a pan. So I have different size pans for like different purposes. So I have like pretty much like large pans, so like full size pans that you guys have probably seen dyers use. When I'm dyeing in there, if I were doing like a regular colorway, I probably wouldn't do more than like 4 or 5 standard 100-gram skeins. In a recent dye with me, I think I threw like 9 of them or 10 in a pan. But that was just to kind of get everything in there at once. But if I were doing like regular colorways, I probably wouldn't do more than like 4. For minis, I typically use like little square, they're basically cake pans, like little 9x9 square cake pans. So in there, if I were doing minis, I probably would do at most like 5 in there as well. And then I also use half size pans, so for that I don't do more than like 2. It's really how much I can fit. It also, if I want to do like a tonal color, you need room for the dyes to move around the pan and to really get kind of evenly throughout the pan. So for that, I wouldn't want to scrunch the yarn in. For a colorway like this where I actually like all of the white to be there, that's one where I can really like squeeze them all in. Like I have 3 skeins here, and you can see kind of to the left side, I just kind of push them all to one side. I think the rest of the pan is actually pretty empty. And that's because when they're scrunched in, it kind of is more barriers against the dye moving around. So again, the answer to all questions, it depends. Do I lay yarn in a specific position in the pan? So I typically do it this way, where I leave them piled up, and I like to do it that way because I get a more random look on the yarn. And actually, let me just say, this is probably the end of the dyeing. Oh, I come back with the last color. I'll let it play the last couple minutes. So if I'm going for, so I will typically mount it this way. That way, if I apply dye across the whole top of that skein, it'll apply it randomly. So the style in my shop is, I don't do a ton of like color block skeins where you get like a huge section of yellow, a huge section of pink, a huge section of blue. I like to more make it a more uniform looking colorway, even if it is variegated. And so because of that, if I mount it up this way, I can kind of dye across the top, but it'll be applied randomly throughout the skein because you have different parts of it. Yeah, and I definitely applied too much dye to that one. That skein, you guys saw it had more dye on it. This is why sometimes you just end up with more dye on there. And so that's kind of how I do it. If I'm doing a tonal color, I'll just like throw it in however it kind of lays and not worry about it so much, because it's going to kind of get in there pretty evenly throughout it. So yeah, I think that is it. Again, all the dye is kind of on there. And again, just like one last comment is, it looks like even on that one DK skein, and I can hold it up again, there's a lot of dye kind of applied, but you see there's still a lot of white there, and there's still a lot of yarn underneath it that didn't have the dye applied to it, which is kind of fun. So I know that was a little clunky, I guess is the word, but I hope you guys liked seeing that dyeing. And again, we can kind of go back and look at anything, and I'm happy to continue to answer questions on it, but I will switch back to just me. So and this is actually better because now I can see the comments better. So yeah, at this point, so that's kind of the dyeing, and again, I'll show you guys the colors. Let me show you the yarn again. So this is that DK skein that was in there. So we saw a lot of the blue, and I think that part where I was kind of trying to pick up some of the dyes off of the top is that dark section there. So again, it's not like it overwhelmed the skein by any means. You just kind of have that dark section in there, versus even this sock yarn has like a darker section in there. So it's kind of funny that I was trying to like pull the dye out, but yeah. That is on the Boardwalk. So again, this is the exclusive colorway for the splash pad party. And I do have a link to it if you look in the description of this video. How do I dry all that yarn when I'm done? Hi, Anton. I have a spin dryer now. So, definitely when I talk behind the scenes of my business, and there are a lot of things that can be bottlenecks in businesses, and for me one of them is the time that it takes yarn to dry. And so I actually bought a spin dryer that I put the yarn in after I've washed it, and it gets most of the water out, and then I hang it up on a drying rack in front of a fan, and that does the rest of the trick. Which tonals would I recommend as a contrast for this particular colorway? So I would probably do Midnight, which is a dark blue tonal. Sorry, I have things on the floor, so I'm gonna keep leaning over. But I also, so this is I'm continuing to answer your question, Wendy, but this is the Hackia hat, which is a pattern by Amba O'Brien, and I have kits for it in the shop. You could use this, which is Sunburst. You could use that because that's a lot of what I used in the speckle. So if you like the yellow, you can use that as a contrast. Yeah, I'd have to think about other ones. I don't think I have any like pure pink tonals, but even, I don't know. I'll keep thinking. But definitely Midnight if you like the blue. Just because, again, we did like a blue skein, but it's still a very light blue, and Midnight is a very dark blue. Yeah. So I do have other things to show if you guys want to see. I have other kits in the shop that I can show you guys, and yarn as well. I'm surrounded by it, as always. So I will start off with some kits that I have for patterns by our one and only Jen, Boston Jen. So, oh yeah, Rose Jen, I think you got Rose Tea. Maybe that I have that here. So let me just show that. So I do have kits in my shop that are based on patterns. So what I call like pattern based kits, which are really fun because I talked about this earlier, but one of the things I do is yarn in any size skeins. And my kind of reasoning, kind of explaining why I started doing that, was I found this was like the idea really started back with the find your fade craze. I don't personally have a large stash. I'm someone who buys for projects. And so I couldn't go into a stash and kind of put together a find your fade. And so I was looking up the kits for them because I thought it was such a cool idea, kind of like everyone else. And the kits for them was like 7 skeins, something like that. So it was like $200 or something for like a shawl kit. And I was like, that's crazy. I can't do that. Especially people were talking about how you use little bits. And I was like, I wish I could just buy like the little bits that I need. Like I need 20 of this and 30 of that, or 50 of this and 40 of that. And so that's kind of where the idea really kind of like came about for starting a yarn shop this way, was to really have hand-dyed yarn more accessible and affordable, because you don't need to overbuy it if you don't want all that yarn. So kind of getting back to it, the pattern-based kits that I have are designed so that you get the yarn you need for the pattern and not too much and not too little. So really fun. So this is the Emmeline May shawl, which is one of Jen's designs, and Suzanne knit this up for me, and it uses overnight oats and rose tea. And I love these two colors together. So I think this is Jen. I think this is the color you were talking about. So it's a different pink, but yeah, I think rose tea and on the boardwalk would work well together too. I know the lighting probably isn't the best, so if anyone wants to see what these two colors would look like together, I can definitely take better pictures. So yeah, and so I have kits in the shop for this pattern, and it's designed so that you won't run out, which is great. But again, it's a smaller shawl, which I love about Jen shawls, is that they're great for not wearing a blanket if you don't want to, but you don't need 2 100-gram skeins for it either. So really fun, and I absolutely love the pattern, and I love these two colors together. So anyway, that is that one. And I do also sell these two colors as like a mix and match kit as well. So if you wanted to get these two colors together, you still can. Another one is that our very own Lisa knit up for me is the Ice Time kits. So I have, Jen has the, again, these are Jen's patterns. So the Ice Time hat, Ice Time cowl, and Ice Time mitts. So Jen has all of them. We all wear, like, knitters and crocheters and crafters. We all have like our accessories that we make, but like they never match, right? So like we probably all have like the shawls that we wear with like the different colored hats. Like, oh, we made that hat with that yarn we really liked, and we made this shawl with these colors that we like, but we don't think about ever matching like whatsoever. So I absolutely love that Jen designed patterns that like actually you could wear a matching set if you want to. So that's really fun. So this is my Frozen colorway, and what I've now called Thawed, which is like the Frozen contrast, a contrast color developed just for Frozen. If you wanted something really colorful, Wendy, you could do Frozen with it. Just kind of go blue, blue crazy. Because Frozen, I don't have a skein of Frozen here, but Frozen doesn't have much white in it. It's like very blue. So if you wanted to do like a blue fade or something, you could. So yeah, I have kits for this. And what is fun about this is I sent Lisa one skein of Frozen and one skein of Thawed, and I think Thawed was like 120 gram skein, so you needed just a little bit more than 100 grams to make all three. I think that's true, that I did it that way, and then just 100 grams of Frozen. But I also have kits where if you just wanted to make the cowl or just the hat, you could also get smaller skeins too. So that's really fun. I actually knit the Ice Time hat and cowl for myself a few years ago too, and I can speak that this is like definitely an addictive color work pattern. It's a mosaic pattern, so you only use one color each round, and I brought it on a trip like back when we went on vacations. Brought it on a vacation and I ran out of knitting because that's how quick and addictive this pattern was. I ran out of knitting on vacation. Isn't that like a knitter's worst nightmare? It happened. Oh, so that's that one. I'm just thinking about vacations. That's the sigh. So yeah, that's those. I have a couple of more patterns, but just waiting for questions if there are any. Okay, so I'm gonna lean down one more time. Another pattern kit that I've recently come out with is this one, which is the Rolling Tide cowl. This is a pattern by Yvonne Poon, who goes by Gamer Babe Knitter. That's like her design name. And this is such a beautiful brioche pattern. If you haven't tried brioche, it does have increases and decreases, but Carissa knit this up for me, and she did not have a ton of brioche experience, so that's a testament. And I still believe that this yarn, so this is my Girl on Fire colorway, the bright yellow and orange, and then the dark is Empowered. And it's a dark black that has bits of red in it too to coordinate it. I just feel like this design and this yarn was like made for each other. So really fun pattern. Yeah, no yarn stores when we were in the Caribbean, that's for sure. So yeah, that's that one. So again, I have this, and there are different sizes of this pattern. So you would have you could choose different size kits. So yeah, that one's really fun too. And kind of going back to like when I was talking during the dyeing about having the yarn like in mounds, so that way I get a variegated look, but it's still kind of not color blocked. I know this is brioche and you can't really see it, but if you hold it up close, you'll see like every stitch is kind of a different color. You get the brighter pink and the red and orange and yellow. You don't get, the pooling of some red here, some orange here, some yellow here. So that's kind of what I meant. Whereas Girl on Fire is a very variegated colorway. There's a lot of different colors in it, but you don't get the pooling. It's kind of pretty random. So yeah. So the last thing that I have to show you guys here is that I have advent calendars listed. I also have Hanukkah kits listed, so whatever you want, if it's because you have a certain holiday you celebrate, or if you just want 24 or 25 skein set versus an 8 skein set, I have advent calendars listed in my shop, as well as 8 nights of Hanukkah kits in my shop. And so there are options for both. They both have a fade gradient set or a mystery, kind of random mystery one as well. So what I have here is what I did last year. So this is my 2020 Advent kit. So this is the full 24. The 8 skein Hanukkah kit was basically like a condensed version of it. And I haven't decided if this year if I'll do the same thing or if I'll do like just a shorter section. But you can see last year's fade set. So it kind of had, it was like a mountainy theme. So I had like the snowy ones into like the cloudy blue, some muted kind of pinks and purples and browns towards the end here. I know it's hard to show a 24 skein set here, but hopefully you get the idea, and I have pictures of it up on social media as well. I'm going to actually really try and cast this on, and I would actually love if people have suggestions. I was thinking, I've had plans of what I'm going to do with this forever. But now I'm thinking maybe I would try to do like a crochet blanket like Jen does. So do you think it should be like each one is like a square and then having a border around it? Or should I just kind of do like a fade striped blanket, crochet blanket? I'd love to know from some of you crochet experts. I've crocheted like one project in my life, so I have no concept of crochet, but I would absolutely love to know. So yeah, so last year, you can see these are like a lot of cooler colors. So this year's mystery grade fadient, did I just make up that new term that I should now use? Fade or gradient set is going to be kind of, the theme is like a beach sunset. So imagine you're on that beach, the sand, this beautiful sunset. So it's probably going to be a bit of warmer tones, but still a mystery. So yeah, that is that Advent set. So yeah, if there are any other questions, I know I just like talked a lot with the dyeing and with all of these fun kits that I have in the shop. If you guys have questions, let me know. Otherwise, we can, you can always reach out, of course, and ask questions later if you want to as well. I know that, not a crocheter, but I would do a fade stripe. That's what I was thinking. Like I was thinking a fade striped one, because then you really see the fade, where if I did like the separate squares, maybe with a border, you would see the fade, I guess, kind of like snake through it, but it wouldn't be like as obvious, right? That's kind of what my thought was. But I didn't know, is it like more fun to do squares, like, or is it fun to do stripes? I don't know. Not a crocheter. I'm also not a crocheter. So, yeah, you can reach out to me anytime. So I am A Girl and Her Wool on Instagram and Ravelry. I have my shop at agirlandherwool.com. And I did post a coupon code. I know I did this kind of a little bit late, but I did post a coupon code in the Ravelry group. If you don't use Ravelry and you want to know what the coupon code is, feel free to send me a message, or, you know, I'm sure like anyone else in the group can look it up and let you know too. So we can definitely do that. Christy likes stripes, and Christy's a crocheter, so probably will have to do the stripes. So yeah, so I have a link to my shop in the description box below. The exclusive colorway will be available through the end of the knit along, and then it will disappear. And so if you want that, it's a good time to do it. And yeah, again, those kits, as well as, I guess I could talk a little bit about the craft journal sticker kits if you guys are interested. I didn't mention that at all. If you guys have 2 more minutes before you want to head off to the next one, I do offer craft journal sticker kits. in my shop now. So if you want a better way to track projects versus through Ravelry, if you can't use Ravelry right now, or you like a keepsake, or you want something to kind of flip through, I've started selling sticker kits that I just bought a plain notebook. This was like a cheap notebook on Amazon. It's just a plain lined notebook, and then I'm just adding colorful stickers to it, and I just track all of my plans and notes, what I worked on, and then I have projects that I take notes on as well. And for someone like me who's just, I know it's, people think I'm crazy when I say it, I'm just like not a super artsy creative person. It's so nice to like pretty up a notebook. Like I love flipping back through this. I try to sit down with it like once a week and go through it and make my notes on it. And it's just been really fun to do and to have. So I wanted to point one out in particular because it's Stash Dash. But if you want to track your stash out during Stash Dash, I do have a stash out kit now in the shop. So if anyone thinks they can match Jen's crazy meterage this summer, here's a way you can track it to take her down. Yeah, I sent some over for Riley. I've been enjoying your crafty chats with Riley. I think it's so sweet that you guys have that bond, and I thought it would be fun for her to use as well, as she seems to be picking up all of the crafts as well. So yeah, those are also in my shop too. And as you visit your local yarn stores, you can track that too. I have a whole bunch of new ones up. And again, it's just a really fun way to make sure you have a keepsake about all of the projects that you put all of your hard work into. So again, if you have questions on those two, you can definitely reach out to me and ask them at any time. Yeah, you'll have to record another chat with her for sure. So I think the next one is Sunsoaked Yarns, and I think she's hosting a Zoom. Yes, there's June and July. I actually released July this past week. So yes, there's June and July are available. If you can't find anything, definitely let me know. So yeah, Sunsoaked Yarns is next, I believe, Jen. Hopefully, if I'm saying this wrong, you'll let me know. And she's hosting a Zoom starting at 11. And then, yeah, we have a whole bunch of fun things all day long. So thanks for joining me and allowing me to kick this off for you guys. And it's been a pleasure chatting with everyone. Enjoy the long weekend if you have one. And kind of the unofficial kickoff of summer. Yeah, Zoom at 11. Okay, good. Did not get that wrong. Sun-soaked yarns. All right, guys. I will probably, I don't see more questions really coming in. So I will say so long. Have a great weekend, and thanks so much. And I will talk to you guys soon. Bye. Yes, and thank you, Jen, for hosting, of course.